Hi, I'm Joel Penkins, definitely not Paul. In this episode, we're going to cover cameras. So you want to get into YouTubing, but you don't know what equipment you need. Surely to make a YouTube video, you need a $40,000 red camera, right? Not so much. There are probably four main camera types you want to look into. First is the humble mobile phone. Now, my mobile phone is not particularly good or new. This is a Moto G3. Pretty much everyone has a smartphone, and all of them, so long as they're relatively recent, 5 years, have okay cameras. A lot of them have very decent cameras, and it's surprising how good an image you can get from something so tiny. There are numerous examples online on the sort of image quality you can expect out of a mobile phone. It doesn't matter what type of video camera you use. If you can't tell an engaging story, no one's going to watch it. The picture quality is important, but not as important as the content. Next up, you've got your point and shoot cameras. I actually don't have a point and shoot camera. I kind of skipped that, so I can't really give advice on that. Most of them will have video to some degree, and it will be probably on par with a mobile phone, but obviously being a larger device, it's going to have a bigger lens on it and you'll get some zoom. Again, the quality you may or may not get out of the camera isn't as important as the story that you're telling. Now, point and shoot cameras have come a long way. Some will be, $50, $100, and they will be okay quality at best. There are some very high-end ones that now shoot 4K that do actually a pretty phenomenal job, and you'd be hard-pressed to ask for more when your medium is YouTube. Now, if you're talking big cinema, million-dollar production, you're going to get a bigger camera, a better camera, but for YouTube, it's more than okay. The next class up is interchangeable lens cameras. These come in basically two varieties, your SLRs and your mirrorless cameras. Both of these have pluses and minuses, but they are both a big step up potentially in image quality from a point and shoot and a mobile phone. Both interchangeable lens camera types, as the name might imply, have options to change lenses. This video is being shot on an SLR, Canon 750D to be precise, and one of the advantages is I can change the lens. So one of the pros and cons of that is I can change to a macro lens like this and get quite a close-up. Not exactly a great look, but artistically you can do something with that. The primary advantage of the interchangeable lens cameras isn't necessarily perhaps the interchangeable lens part, but they have a larger sensor. Now, if we compare a smartphone camera, it has quite a small sensor, and subsequently it lets in less light. As you'll learn in this series, light is key to getting good video. The more light you have, the more options you have, the better lit your frame is going to be, the easier it is to tell a story without resorting to a lot of tricks. In the case of mirrorless versus SLR cameras, SLRs will edge out the mirrorless cameras in how much light they can let in, simply because of the sensor size for the most part, when we're talking about under $1,000 cameras. There are exceptions to the rule. There are some full frame, meaning they've got a 35mm sensor, mirrorless cameras, and they are amazing, but they are also expensive. For DIY, creator, maker, whatever you want to call it, style videos, an interchangeable lens camera is amazing. It has more range than you will ever need and possibly will ever use in your camera. They have really kick-started a lot of camera makers to make better cameras, because suddenly you've got one camera that does stills amazingly and does video pretty damn good too. However, it's not always the best choice. The next type of category is a camcorder. They used to be big business, now they've sort of gone away and they're sort of coming back as well. Some of them are cheap and nasty, some of them are very expensive and very amazing. There are some happy grounds in between. The advantage over a camcorder over an interchangeable lens camera is that you can't change the lens. Now that sounds like a downside, but if you're trying to teach somebody how to do something, you don't necessarily need a very shallow depth of field, and that is something that the cameras that let in a lot of lights with a large sensor, the interchangeable lens cameras, excel at. What do I mean by that? Well, here are a few clips I've put together that really show that shallow depth of field, where one part of the image is in focus and it gets out of focus very quickly for a very artistic style. This particular clip is of a saw blade Now we're talking about a few millimeters between what's in focus and what's not. Do you generally need that? Well, that's up to you, and that really depends on what type of videos you want to be producing. There are other advantages to camcorders. They will typically have better battery life for video use. Camcorders have typically come with remotes, or you can buy them, that allow you to zoom without having to manually go over. They've also typically had better autofocus in video. Autofocus on an SLR, which I'm using now, works in video, but it can be very quick, very back and forth, and it can be a bit funny at times. Now, obviously there are more brackets you can look at, like proper video cameras that have interchangeable lenses, but we're talking the thousands of dollar mark now. In this series, I'm not going to focus too much on the mobile phones or on point and shoots, because my mobile phone's quite out of date and it's frustrating to use at the best of times, and I don't have a point and shoot. But interchangeable lens cameras, specifically DSLRs and camcorders, will be mostly what we cover. With that all said, you probably want to know, what camera should you actually get? As of the time of recording this, if you have little to no budget, use your phone. Good chance is that your phone would be better than anything under $200 to $300 that you could pick up anyway. So you've got a little bit more of a budget, maybe $400 or so. Probably the best thing that you can get is an action cam. That'll give you a really good way to record a lot of footage. They'll be useful if you continue this hobby and need a second camera, because they can get into spots other cameras can't, and it's doing something that your phone can't, and that's usually long format recording. Alright, so you've got a little bit more money to spend. You want to get a serious camera, for whatever that actually means, and you're looking at things like SLRs. My recommendation would be to get the Panasonic G7. The G7 does 4K recording. It's a micro four thirds camera, so it has quite a large array of lenses to choose from, and there are so many people using the camera for a good reason. It's inexpensive, it produces pretty phenomenal video. I don't think there's anything else to add to that. It is really a great entry camera, and to beat its quality you need to go many times more than it. But what about Canon or Nikon, two of the big brands everybody thinks of, and Canon's what I'm shooting on now? Don't go Canon. While I love the Canon glass that I have, their cameras are incredibly out of date. In 2017 they've released, I think it's 4 new SLRs. None of them have 4K footage. This is 2017. If you want 4K footage or higher bitrate 1080p or higher frame rate 1080p, you have to go for their $5,000 body. A little bit expensive to get the 5D Mark IV. So my recommendation would be 100% go for Panasonic, either the G7 or G85. Or if you like and want to spend a bit more money, the Sony A6500, I believe, is the entry-level 4K amazing camera from Sony. Hopefully that will get you started, and in the next episode we're going to look at lenses.